All right, happy Sunday. I hope everyone had a chance to get some good rest, enjoy some family time. We're going to take a moment in this video to go through a few tickers, look into what's happening in the market, and kind of prepare ourselves for the week. Since I was planning to chart a few things that are on my watch list, I wanted to make sure and do a recording and maybe even squeeze in a few extra tickers. That a few people mentioned they wanted some trade ideas on. In no way am I giving you financial advice. This is just me talking out loud while I chart and prep, and I hope that it helps you out. If this video is helpful to you, please do like and subscribe to the channel for more. I would like to keep doing Sunday prep sessions just to give us a chance to look at some of the charts and get an idea of what we might be interested in, especially with some of the hot stocks. I won't cover every single one that is on this list, but I will do my best to get through them and to get through them in enough time so that way you can prepare yourselves for the week. So hopefully this video won't be too long, but stick with me. So the first stock that I do have up is Apple. Apple is one of the top tickers on my watch list going into next week. So I'll pull that chart up and we can start there. All right, so we're going to zoom out for a moment and just take a look at what Apple is doing on our monthly chart, right? Just want to get an idea of where we stand. So cool thing here when you look at the monthly is last month, we pretty much pulled back to test our 12 EMA. So on my chart, what I currently have set up is the 12 EMA, and I also have my 200 weighted moving average sitting all the way down here. So we're well above the 200 trend is looking pretty good. And when we experienced a recent pullback in January, we pulled back right to this 12 EMA. So everything right now looks pretty solid. We bounced off of it. We are so far above the 12 EMA, not touching, we concluded. And yeah, just get an idea from the monthly of what things are looking like. That candle looks pretty good. And we are mid-month, so let's see how Apple closes the month of February now that we have earnings out the way. So Apple does have an event happening. I believe that's happening on the 19th. So you're gonna want to be cautious. I need to check the time of when that event is happening, but I do believe that it's happening during trading hours. So that'll be an interesting one to watch on what's that? The 19th? I believe it's the 19th. So we'll see what takes place on the 19th with Apple. But overall, on the weekly, we are looking to reclaim, which is get above this 12 EMA. This purple line that you see here, I added as an anchored VWAP from earnings. And it looks like from there, from that pullback, we're looking to get above that anchor VWAP, get above my 12 EMA. And where you see these two lines here, this is a feature in my chart system that I have that basically in January gave us an arc, right? This arc signals that the trend is reversing, right? And so what I got here was Apple did a really nice solid pullback all the way to this buy zone right here, demand zone. Um, and then it pretty much bounced out so aggressively. What is that? The week of the 10th, February 10th, that week. Very strong move. We were up $16, almost $17 on the week. So pretty strong move out of this zone here, if you were looking at Apple all of last week. Okay, so we're moving above some of this EMAs. This is the weekly, and my Wolf trend moving average is also trying to catch Apple. And what'll be a great signal, a very bullish signal on the weekly would be that price gets above this, right? You see when price is above it, boom, 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 move right up to where we reached our all-time high. But I'm going to take it to the daily for a second and we'll start to kind of get an idea of what we need Apple to do for us going into next week. All right, so for Apple on the daily, we are above a few things. So let's just break it down for you so you can remember what's on my chart. I have the 200 weighted moving average. We are well above that now. I also have my 12 EMA. We're above that. And where you see this green and red, my wolf trend moving average, we are well above that as well. We get an inverse arc. So price is moving above all of these signals, including my anchored VWAP from earnings. All great indicators that Apple is pushing up. Looks like we're going to end up running right into this trend line, and that would be a really nice test. Somewhere around where I have resistance labeled 247 to 222. Um, I did put some notes here for myself as far as what I would be looking to do with Apple once we hit this resistance level. And that's just so I can give a visual of what my plan would be. Now, Apple does indeed need to break 247. I have it labeled as 247.22, and I base that off of this candle. So you could really just say 247.24 to be exact, if we're just going to be exact about it. So I'm going to keep this as my highlighted resistance, and I'll show you in a minute where I grabbed this from as well. And then we also have the all-time high, right, sitting at 260.10. So I do have that labeled on my chart here. So this just gives me an idea of where we are. Now, if we're not able to break 247.24, then this will continue to act as an area of resistance and we can kind of bounce around. We may come test 242. If we lose that, I see that the chart has 237.34 around that area as another level of support. So we'll just see what Apple does. Again, a lot of this will be based on the news and the hype around their event. Maybe we get a pre-pump before the event, or maybe it's after the event. And considering that the market does appreciate what Apple has for us in this next reveal, I think they're revealing a new iPhone. So we're just going to go down to the 4 hour, take a peek at what's happening here. And for me, in this chart confirmation system, everything is aligning. I have my EMA 8s curling up right here. I have my 200 right here. We're getting the 12 EMA and my wolf trend moving average all crossing above this 200 weighted moving average, which is a good bullish signal. I like that crossover. Another cool thing here is that we get the floating candle. Now, one thing that I was aware of in my moves for Apple on Friday, because it did give a really nice pump on Friday from about 240 to, oh, actually the low of this candle was 240.99, right, at opening. And it ran right up to resistance at 245.76. This is historical resistance. So I can just scroll back to the left, right? Always look to the left to see where what price did at this area. And as you can see, is act as support. But eventually this candle broke that support, and that's when Apple pulled all the way back. So basically, we have just returned right back to this level of now resistance. We need to break that. But we also need to keep in mind that I have this priced at 247.24 on my chart for a reason. It is another area of resistance. So even if we broke above this resistance at 245, yeah, we could potentially get a move, that $2 move. But the cleanest trade, I'll tell you, is once we can break above here. We'll take a peek at the 3 hour, which will kind of give you an idea of what we're looking at. So my chart, again, is a system. So it automatically comes with all of these um, these signals that basically tell me what's ahead, what to look for. And so with Apple, I already knew that we were running right into a supply zone. So even with a move on Friday, we're going to run right into where we have sellers positioned here since what, January 6th. So we've revisited right here on this candle on the 31st and pulled back pretty strong from this move. Once that happened, prices just came all the way back again and did a return. So again, if we break this 245 area here, it's 245, I think like 75 resistance, then we will have to test 247.24. And then if we can break above it, we'll come here around 249, and then we'll just keep pumping our way up. The next real area of resistance will be when we hit this significant area of resistance, I should say, is when we hit this area at about 257.65. So a nice move, a nice trade setup would be planning your trade once Apple can clear 247.24. If you're not one of those people, right? Like that had these better entries, right? So grabbing Apple out of this demand zone here would have been your best entry point. Once you've seen your indicators telling you that Apple was making a reversal, then that would have been a nice entry point. Now I did also plug in Fib to the daily chart just to get an idea, right, of what's happening, and also just to give a different view for those that are not using my wolf chart setup, um, that you can also see that it all lines up the same. Significant support on the on Apple from Fib from the daily. We have it at 227.20. Um, Again, I have EMAs also here. You will be seeing the 920 and 200, and I still have my anchored view sitting here. What's pretty cool is that, again, all EMAs are curling up on the daily, and you can see clearly that maybe a few cents off from what entry I have, but 247.53 is where you'd see your next test if Apple can hold over 243.65 based on this Fibonacci. So I'm going to keep an eye on Apple going into Tuesday's opening, and also just considering the fact that they do have some hype around their event coming up. So when you're looking at larger time frames and you're wanting to plan your trade setup, yes, you prep to have an idea of what's happening, but then you can monitor your trade from the larger time frames, right? So right here, again, we're looking for Apple to push and get to a point where they can break over this area. Again, I could raise it up a little bit to match my Fibonacci price. What was that? 247.53. It goes a little bit above my supply zone, so I'm going to keep it to what I like to see. Although you can follow Fib and you definitely almost be right exact to what I'm matching on my chart for entries for Apple. So again, keep an eye out on that break over 247. I have it at 247.24. I mean, whatever you want to measure it as. Just know that once we get around 247, we need to start holding candles above those levels to move on to the next price, which is going to probably get us at about 249, maybe a little bit more. If this turns into support, this is a previous month high. And then we'll start to make that move up. And as you're seeing on the higher time frames, that's a more cleaner trade, less resistance, not a lot of choppiness there. All right, so that's going to be Apple. We will take a peek at Nvidia. I mean, we can look at the monthly on Nvidia. You always want to get an idea. Wow, look at that candle so far this month. Insane. I'm going to reset my chart. Very bullish. So basically, on the monthly, we did come back and test the 12 EMA. See, Nvidia's just been on a very strong run. We're well above the 200 weighted moving average. We're here on our 12 EMA. We experienced that pullback, and now we're looking for price to bounce back up. Obviously, we get a breakout over 153.13. We start to make some new highs here. That's the monthly view. Again, very strong bounce for the month of February for Nvidia from that pullback they experienced with DeepSeek. On the weekly, we were off of our 12. As you can see here, we were under our last earnings VWAP, and we were also under my wolf trend moving average. And so this signaled the reversal here. It did try to bounce and get above, but again, we had another sell-off. I don't know if we would have sold off, honestly, if that DeepSeek news wouldn't have hit us in this particular week. I believe this was the week that it happened. And I mean, well, no, this was January's pullback. So this probably is the week we start to get the news on DeepSeek. I can't remember exactly which week, but I mean, we sold off after that for a minute. Nevertheless, great pullback, nice recovery. And if we take this now to the daily, what I did like was that we got this inverse arc, which is a clean signal entry. It caught price around the demand zone. And here we got candles recovering my 12 EMA, my 200, and now we have price above my anchored VWAP from earnings. And then we're holding above the last previous day high, prices above it. We're respecting it as basically support, and we're at a trend line. Now, you can see ahead, right, that Nvidia does have some resistance right about 142. We'll start hitting it. You can kind of measure it here at the low of this candle, maybe 141.88. And so if you're a visual person, you can set some alerts. Just set an alert that we're entering. And you can also add a text if you're a visual person. I like to see it in case I share my chart out with anyone. We would mark this as daily, reaching daily supply zone. And now it doesn't matter what time frame I'm on, as price is moving here, I know what's that we're going to start experiencing a bit of resistance. It get choppy here. It just depends on where buyers are at against sellers, and this will just be a battlefield right here. And we know that because we sold off so much from this particular high candle. So let's take a look at the 4 hours. So we haven't broke trend line here to give a signal of a continuation. And we also know that once we do, we'll meet some resistance around 141.80. I think the low of this candle I said was 141.88. If I just want to make it exact. All right. So that's a daily. I did like how they closed on a Friday. It wasn't too much of a Friday sell-off for Nvidia. And we're trying to break the trend line here on the 4 hour as well. And as you can see, the label that I have here in my alert just going to continue to follow me. So even though I would think from the 4 hour I have a little bit of wiggle room, I know that on a daily I'm meeting resistance about right here. So we'll just keep that in mind. Above the EMAs, so everything again continues to look pretty clear. And I like to scan the different time frames because what might show up in one time frame on my wolf chart, I might not see that if I'm looking at it just from the 5 minutes. So you want to do a deep dive and understand all of your potential areas of resistance. So from this entry point, right, once price was above, I guess you can say 137.22, just a rough estimate, and it held well above that, you can pretty much see that we do have that clean move to at least test 141.88. And that will just kind of be based on how we open on Tuesday and what the market is doing with Nvidia pre-earnings. We do know that we have earnings on the 26th, so not this week, but the following week on Wednesday. And that will be after hours. So you have to keep that in mind if you're wanting to make sure that you secure any profits. If this is going to be a bullish move for Nvidia up until earnings, you want to make sure you're locking in your profits and securing all of that pre-earnings so that you're taking the risk off the table if anything was to change and maybe we get a reversal trend post earnings. Um, okay, we can take a look at the 2 and 1 hour. And then, of course, you'll plan your entries once you do your deep dive assessments from the smaller time frames, especially if you're day trading, right? You just want to get an idea of what can come from the higher time frames, but then you trade and plan your entries from a smaller time frame. So on the 2 hour, I see there's some resistance that will meet around 139.65. But ultimately, again, my target is 141.88. You just want to have time on your contracts to see that through. So we may get a little bit of bouncing around here. As long as support is holding, then we'll break over this resistance and make our next move to 141.88. All of these lines that you're seeing that are automatically on my chart are historical support and resistance lines. So you can really look to expect price to have some sort of reaction there. It doesn't mean they can't break above it. It just means that it is a significant area of support and resistance. And if you're looking here on the 1 hour, this is a good example of a thicker line of resistance, which just means that I'm sorry, yeah, resistance. So this just means that this is a heavier resistance, and you can see how much price kind of played around this area, but was not able to break and hold. So we get a break, we get a retest, and we pull back. We don't hold over. So when you're hearing break and hold, that means that on a retest, we do need to bounce and hold that support. Or in another case, you can break and retest from the bottom, and that needs to continue to hold as resistance. So this is another example. We break under, we go back to retest, it holds as resistance versus when it failed as support, and we get the pullback to the 200. All right, so in this case, we broke it, we held, we came back, we did the retest, and we did a nice move up. So we'll just continue to follow our target for Nvidia. Overall, I do like the setup. I know that again, there's just going to be some resistance once we reach this 141.88. Again, it does not mean that we can't break through it, especially pre-earnings, especially with any increase in volume from buyers. We'll probably see a very strong continuation. At some point, we may get some consolidation once we reach here before the next break. All right, let's look at another ticker. Someone asked about Walmart, so I want to cover Walmart for them. All right, what is Walmart doing? Take some of this off of my chart. Look what happened when Walmart broke my resistance at 96.18. And you can see why I had it at 96.18, which was where their recent, I believe this was the all-time high. Actually, it was 96.18 to be exact. Oh, yeah, that's what I have, 96.18. We we were at this price. We kind of did some bouncing around between that, did a good pullback to retest support. So another example of a break and retest on a larger time frame. We broke historical resistance around this area here. Maybe we base it off of this, 88.93. We broke it. We hit a high. I think this would have been an all-time high for Walmart at that time. We came back and tested this support and then kind of did some consolidation before the next breakout. So, Walmart is on a really nice run. I mean, in a situation like this where they're reaching all-time highs, you could toss in a fib, right? So I think I have it already pre-saved. Give yourself a fib. I could do it manually, but you can also, if you're not familiar with manual, just add in a fib or auto fib to give you some type of a guide. And then you can see what the target would be next would be 107 and then 109.88 based on the daily. Um, Apple has an ATR right now of $1.64. So that means that on average, it can move about $1.64 a day. Doesn't mean that it can't move more or less. This is just the average. So let's move off of the daily. We clearly can see this is just a bullish move for Apple. I'm sorry, Walmart. I don't want to start saying the wrong in the stocks. This is a bullish move from the break of 96.18 for Walmart. So again, you can go in to indicators, find your auto fib, toss it in, and then just follow along with fib. 102.33 would need to hold as support, and then you would look for the target of 107 and then 109.88. Earnings for Walmart is on the 20th. That is this upcoming Thursday. Again, they're already at all-time highs, so trying to call what'll happen with earnings is just a bit risky, right? The chart says bullish, but again, we need to know how the market will react post earnings before you take any risk. So you could potentially get some more trade setups. Oh, I have it on here twice. You can get some trade setups leading up to earnings, but just again, be careful and make sure that you're locking in your profits. If we take Apple to a smaller time frame, just to kind of get an idea of trade setups, let's see what we get. We already know they're bullish on the larger time frames. So yeah, we're looking at 103, 103.10 roughly, 103.11 if you base it off of this candle here as a act of support. This was resistance, now turn support. We can potentially come back to test this 103.11, and then what you want to see is a nice bounce from there. We can come a little bit lower. I'd say the next area would be testing 102.93. And then you see there's some support on the 1 hour from here. So we'll test this fair value gap. There's a order block here. So, just be mindful. There's some support once we get closer to 102 that you want to, you don't want to be trying to short if you know there's a lot of support. Unless you're going to go longer, give it time to work through it and you're just super bearish on Walmart. However, I wouldn't counter trade the trend. And if you are, just be mindful where support is and whether or not it will hold there. So yeah, you could just plan your trade based off of the support that you see and just make sure, look at that. We have a lot of support here, even on the 15 minute. So let it come back and test that 103 area, potentially come back all the way to 103.34 is where this 200 is sitting and see maybe if that'll hold as support. But a good pullback would be nice before the next leg, which would be breaking this high. And then we'll go ahead and target those areas I was calling from the daily, which was like that 107. And so forth, I think all the way like to 109 from tossing in the fib. So Walmart looks good, looks bullish. Maybe let's see if we can get a good pullback before earnings. And then catch a nice bounce. So maybe Tuesday we get that pullback and then we can kind of trade the next setup. There is support though, so just be careful trying to short in all of this. We'll catch the 200. There's a lot of buyers here in the 5 minute. So if you're looking for a day trade setup, it may be better to try to catch support and ride it back up. If it gives a signal, if it gives a bullish signal. Um, Wynn. I was helping someone with a earnings trade on Wynn, which went really well. It ran right exactly to the target that we were talking about, which was 88. And as you can see, did a lot of consolidation. So let's just take a moment to see what's happening with Wynn. They had good earnings. Yeah, there's just a lot of resistance. The cleanest trade, if you're not going to go super long, and then would be 110.49 entry. Actually, you'll base it off of this candle where this supply zone was created in April. So that would be 110.38. That's a lot of resistance to work through. Doesn't mean they can't come and test some of the price action here. I mean, price points in this supply zone. Just know it could get a little rocky because this is a week. I'm sorry, this is a monthly supply zone. We're in the monthly. So even more reason to just keep in mind that if they look a little bit better, if they can get above this 110.38. I'm actually going to set an alert. Now, with time on a contract, I'm sure, and you're bullish on them, then that's different. But the cleanest trade setup would be if you see them breaking above 110.38. Otherwise, maybe wait to see if they'll test some additional support levels, but I'm just going to set an alert and I'm going to follow this supply zone and see what happens. So again, that's the monthly. We can see that they've been on a downtrend, and I can say that because we are one on the monthly above price is under my 200 WMA, price is under my 12 EMA, and is also under wolf moving, my wolf trend moving average. So no signals, honestly, that there's a strong reversal. Good earnings gave it a little bit of a pop. There's just still a lot of work to be done here. Once they can break above it from the monthly, you can see the setup to get to about 120. So that's like a $10 move before they hit another monthly supply zone. And you kind of see the same thing on the weekly, just a lot of resistance ahead. And so if you're basing it off the weekly, we do start to see some little bit of curl up happening. The best action would be to get them above this 200 to move forward. I'm kind of glad that the person that I was helping did close their trade and take profit on Wynn. Let's just see what they can do once they start breaking some resistance. Yeah, I mean the cleaner trade would be to get in at 110.38, a little bit above it if you're looking from the weekly, 112.43. I'm not mad at this 110.38 in time on a contract. Then you have a strike price you could look at for 117, 118. And honestly, look at how clean. We'll probably see resistance on smaller time frames in the midst of this, but just look at the cleaner move on the weekly with time to get to the next supply zone. Trying to see if we're getting a daily. Oh yeah, on a daily we're getting some nice signals. Um, we've broke up again. Great earnings has. Well, let's just look at this. Yeah, they met on both, and so even with time, if you made an entry on based on a daily, they're in a supply zone. And you can base an entry actually if we can break over the daily supply zone. You just have to remember that there's going to just be a lot of choppiness at different levels because of that monthly supply zone. Actually, I want to go back to the monthly one more time. Where do we even meet that supply zone on the monthly matters? Because the reaction could be immediate. Okay, here we go. This would be another alert for me. And I like text. I just feel like this supply zone will matter once we reach it, how much we'll get into it. Because you see, there's candles that reach pretty much, they go deep into it. I mean, we could have experienced a breakout this last go round, but there was earnings and it looks like they just had to pull back. Could have potentially broke out on these last bullish moves, but they didn't. So we're just coming right back to it with more attempts to break through this supply zone. So what we'll do is we'll keep our eyes out for reaching 91.67. So if we take it back to the daily, we now have this to kind of pay attention to. This is just telling me, hey, we're reaching that zone where you might start getting a real reaction. It's more significant on each higher time frame, so I just want to pay attention to it. So I know once we reach here, even if price gets in here, we're going to get a little bit of choppiness through our target to 110.38, 112.22. 2-ish. Just be mindful of that. So if you're going to trade Wynn and you get that confirmation on a daily, you just want to have enough time. This will be a longer swing to work through some supply. And you have to remember, we'll reach these and we could get some choppiness here. This is a daily supply zone too. So just keep those things in mind. Otherwise, the signals here, we've reached 200 from last earnings that just posted. We have our EMA curling back up. We also have the wolf trend moving average giving us a potential arc, which will also signal because price is above it now. So we should start to get that full form of an arc. We should get our 12 EMA starting to cross up, and we'll see where this takes us. And if they do have a significant pullback post earnings, I mean, so far they did a really nice move the day after earnings. They post, yeah, they posted after hours on Thursday. All right, that's when just wanted to give a quick idea of something outside of the norm that if you weren't looking. I do actually like the fact that Wynn had a good earnings, so I am tracking this one. Um, Airbnb, let's take a look. Airbnb had a really good earnings. Their last earnings, they actually sold off pretty strong, and this one they did a gap up. So that just goes to show you can't always say what'll happen on earnings. You just got to be prepared to for whatever direction. So we're working our way above the 12 on the monthly. I'm sorry, I didn't want to go to the 3 month actually. I wanted to do just the month. Still the same story, working our way above our EMAs. Where's my 200? Not here. I have to go to a different time frame. All right, so yeah, we are doing a recovery. As you can see, the high of Airbnb was from 20 February of 2021. Their high was 219.94. And so this last candle here closed at 163.93. Very bullish signal so far. The month is not over, so we'll just follow what happens. And we're looking to see if we can start getting a monthly candle above your 12 EMA. Wow. Look at this weekly. With the weekly closing, this next candle here being above the trend line, being above our EMAs, this next weekly candle that would open would be a really cool signal. Now we're on the weekly. We'll have to look to see what price does around 170. Yep, 170.10 as resistance. And yeah, you could actually see where we hit the supply zone. So choppy, choppy here. But if you're getting a nice signal like what we saw on the weekly, you wait for some sort of a pullback from this supply zone and try to find you a nice entry point to swing this one. I don't know if this next week is, like I said, going to continue to be a bullish candle. You're going to have a nice potential setup for just swing on Airbnb. We see how high they can go, so break above 170.10. Yep. We can start breaking price above 170.10 out of all of this resistance and the supply zones. Then we can start to make our way. Let's look to the left. Okay. Yep. You can see where we can go from there. I'm not saying you'd reach the whole highest point, but as you can see from historical price action, once we can break that resistance, we do have some nice moves that we can make up. So keep an eye on Airbnb. I'm giving you an idea that the weekly looks super bullish. Breaking above 170.10 would be a really nice trade setup. Let's just go to the 4 hour. Yeah, I think I like Airbnb as another watch. I'm going to set some alerts, take a little bit of a deeper dive in what we can get out of a trade setup, but that weekly candle is really something I'm interested in. I like that weekly candle. I'm gonna throw a earnings was the 13th. Actually, delete this. So they posted earnings on the 13 after hours. This is the gap up. Just follow along and see what we get from there. But yeah, I like Airbnb, guys, so I'm gonna be keeping that one on watch and just following the setup. Again, cleanest would be above this supply zone. Doesn't mean if you catch a nice pullback, you can't just swing this one long and give it time to work its way out. Otherwise, if you don't want to go super long, which might work out because look at the weekly again, we're set to open a candle above this trend line and above these EMAs. We're getting all the nice signals that you can get a nice swing out of Airbnb with a target to really ideally break that high of 170.10. It's just gonna again take a little bit of time. Might get some choppiness on the way there for that $10 move. On average in a week, they do move about $10, but again, there's sellers right ahead of us. Well, we're actually in the midst of sellers. All right, let's cover one more. Let's see. I could look at Palantir, but I'd rather look at e.l.f. And yeah, I was definitely all in the e.l.f. chart, so I'm going to clean some of this up. Palantir, guys, is at an all-time high. You're going to want to watch to see what it does to test new resistance and support levels, and just make sure that you have a stop loss if it was to pull back on you, because if unless you're just not a long-term, unless you are a long-term investor on them. e.l.f. Okay. So e.l.f. had earnings. They missed by 2.38%, 38%. They did beat their revenue by 7.54%. So they experienced a pretty strong sell-off. Um, the weekly candle is still playing around with my anchor VWAP. However, we are well under the 200, the 12, and we actually started the pullback pre-earnings. So they've been in a pullback since January 27. You could have been in puts, honestly, with this weekly confirmation going into the next week. It's just that you would have been gambling with their earnings coming up. I hate to say gambling, it's just a risk. You'll be taking a risk holding swings with earnings coming up unless you had a really nice entry and can leave something open. Okay, so let's look at this. The opportunity short presented itself really all the way up here uh, from January 21st on that daily candle. And I mean, you could have been in puts all the way to where they, I guess you can say, found support because after that earnings drop, this is a big gap, right? They pull back here, but they've been holding the anchor VWAP. There's a bit of there's buyers here, I guess, from, let's just look over, squeeze this in. We have buyers. Where are buyers? We have to go back pretty far. All right, so this zone, which is on my chart automatically, has been around since March, March 10th, 2023. So it has been quite a while since price has revisited this area, but as soon as it did, it definitely held up pretty well. It did kind of go under it, but bounced right back up. And so what I'm looking to see is what happens next. Are we going to go ahead and push back to potentially test this 200? Nothing on this chart gives any bullish signals. Everything is saying that this is a very weak chart. Um, I don't know if they would actually ever drop this low. But what could happen is they can probably come back and test the low from earnings, that earnings drop, which was like 63.50, and see if that holds as support. You see it on my chart, if I zoom in, as a previous week low. So if we come back and test that previous week low and lose support, then yeah, maybe. I'm just trying to see where we can find some strong buyers. It wouldn't look good from what I see. Yep, this is definitely going to be your support. So if you're trading e.l.f. and you start to see that we pull back under like $71 or so, look to see if we're going to retest this 63.50 as support. Um, that's what I would watch for now. I'm looking potentially to take a short position. They did a really nice bounce again. You could see it even better on the 3 hour time frame from the earnings drop. They did a nice recovery. They came back and tested this 200. Price never got above it, and I'm already getting a signal on the arc signal telling me that we're potentially going to pull back. The next test will be around this trend line. Well, actually VWAP, this anchor VWAP I tossed on from earnings, and then we'd pull back to this trend line. Then we could pull back all the way to this previous low. And then again, it just doesn't look too good for them if they lose. I'm just trying to see if maybe we have some type of fair value gap if we anything that would catch it. So yeah, if we lose the support that I was talking about, we can probably come around 58. Let's look at this a little bit better. Sometimes you have to look far to the left to find next targets when we haven't been here for a while. So we would look to test 58.76. We also have some areas right at this area of a fair value gap, 52.57. So this may be what catches it when we come back. So that's if we lose this zone right here, right? And we lose this demand zone, we lose that anchor VWAP I tossed on, then yeah, we would see price start to we would put targets around 58 and so forth. Look to the left, try to find where we saw some nice responses and buyers stepping in, and then you can look at that as clues for where the next levels of support would be. You're just going to have to zoom out because again, price has been well above this area that we're in right now. It's kind of insane to see the pullback that's been happening since August of this year. I mean, so if you were following along here, this particular swing would have played out very well from 162 all the way down to 109, and then a lot of consolidation. It basically just created lower highs. It did attempt to do another breakout, failed, complete pullback. Splits would have played again on January 21st, all the way down to where we are now. So again, another one that's on my watch list. I'm more bearish on this chart, and so that's what I would be looking for. We'll cover one more, which is Affirm. I do like Affirm. I do like the signals that they're giving. I want to go here. Affirm is, let's see. Yeah, they look pretty good. Affirm looks pretty good. We're looking at the monthly on Affirm, and we're gonna test probably this 83.57. Just toss that on there for a moment. 83.57. That looks like the target where you're going to want to see what happens next. If we break it, then you just go in and find some next areas of support and resistance. And I'm just eyeballing this. I'm going to go to a smaller time frame. It's probably going to be around 94 ultimately, but I think we'll find more when we look at smaller time frames. Yeah, and so this price point that I have, 83.57, matches up pretty close to where on the weekly you'll find a fair value gap. I don't see the prices came back to this gap yet. And so that would be where you may experience the potential pullback. Now, buyers can clearly start to work this out, right? And price will continue to push above and maybe some choppiness. Not saying we're going to sell off once we reach here, but just expect some reactions as we get to my level 83.57. And just know right ahead of that is this fair value gap. So if you didn't have the best entry, you may want to be careful trying to trade chase this high, but you could get potential day trade setups to get to that $3 move up on the daily. Again, everything is signaling that they are still trying to push up. I think they're definitely going to come here and test. So keep an eye out on a firm. Know what's ahead. There's going to be some resistance ahead that you have to keep in mind. I think even when I was looking at them, I missed how high they've actually been. So in my initial review, just looking at it, I was like, they look really good. I didn't realize their ultimate high is 176.65. So they just haven't been here since 2021. They've been held down for quite a bit of time. Anyway, my idea would be that the target would be 83.57 short term. And then you might get some choppiness if we break price and hold over 83.57. And then you would look to see if we can start breaking out to that next leg up, which is like in the 90s. You could definitely toss a fib in there, right? Look at the fib. Price above 85.46, fib will guide you through to 96.42, potentially 103.19, and so forth. So you can follow fib. I just want to make sure you're understanding that we're going to get some resistance as we get closer over 83, over $83. That is Affirm, just another one to keep on your watch, guys. We could keep doing this. I don't want to make this video too long. These are just a few that I have my eyes on, and we'll finalize some alerts and just see what trade setups approach me. Instead of chasing, let's just see what comes to us. Let's prep, set our alerts, plan our trades with our top 1 to 3 tickers that we want to follow, and then you execute. You don't chase. Let it come to you, and then plan your entries. I hope this was a helpful video to kind of give you some ideas for going into next week. If it was, just leave a comment, like the video, and subscribe to the channel. I'll try to do this weekly. So if you have any tickers that you want to have covered going into next week, just let me know. I'll try to squeeze those in. Thank you for watching. Have a good evening.